they don't know how to, they're not sure when to ask, they're not sure what to ask for, which is kind of process-based stuff. You can learn that. Or people say they don't want to be a burden on someone else, or that they're worried, and I call it the ick, right? People just feel a bit icky about doing it. If people are talking about you anyway, why not give them some extra tools and be more intentional about it so that they're actually talking about you in the right way to the right people and you're actually getting the introductions? It should feel like asking a favour from a friend. So what's the worst that could happen if you ask someone for an introduction?
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Sales Cadence podcast. My name is Matt Sykes. I'm your host. And joining me on the podcast today is Dave Plunkett from Collaboration Junkie. Dave's an absolute expert in the world of referrals and partnerships. It's funny, isn't it? Referrals, pretty commonplace in the world of sales. I'm sure all of you have been bamboozled by that quote you often see on LinkedIn. 91% of buyers would give a referral. Only 11% of salespeople ask for one. So there's something going on behind the scenes that's stopping the great sales community from leveraging what is effectively a very logical way of doing things. And what's great about Dave coming on the podcast is he will explore and help us understand the reasons why. He'll put aside some of the myths that are restricting organizations and individuals from leveraging what is essentially a very natural thing for a human being to do for another person. Dave very kindly shares his dance framework. He's going to give you 5 tips so that you can start or even just improve if you already started the way that you go about getting referrals and partnerships. It's one of those classic podcast, folks, where it's full of gold. I think you're going to really enjoy this one. Dave Plunkett, welcome to the Sales Cadence podcast.
Awesome. Thank you very much, man. Absolute pleasure to be here.
And I am pleasured by the fact that you're here. I'm so looking forward to our conversation this afternoon. Before we go anywhere near you and how great you are, I'm going to take you right back, Dave, right back to probably primary school, maybe early start of high school. Something will have happened in your world where you suddenly realised that if you did something for someone, they would give you money. So my question to you is this: do you remember what you were doing when you made your very first sale?
Oh, no, my very first sale. So you could argue that life is a pitch, right? I'm sure I'm not the first guest that has said this. And I think there's a physical sale piece, which was when I was a kid. I had like a Saturday job in a hardware store, local hardware store, and all that wonderful stuff.
Yeah.
But I think there's the broader sale piece of, if you truly engage with someone and you show an interest and you're interested rather than being interesting, then someone will give you their time and their energy and you'll form a true connection with people. And I think that's the piece that I learned to sell quite easily, even if I didn't realize I was doing it. I was a forces brat. So I think I went to 12 different schools, Matt.
Wow.
And so you're just used to that whole thing of kind of being the new person in class. It was never really a thing because everyone in my world was all the time. So that learning to be able to just engage with people quickly was something that became second nature. That certainly helped me. So nature and nurture. My dad is very much a natural connector of people. So there's that. And then I was in an environment where I learned to develop those relationship building skills really, really quickly. So
that's a fascinating story because anyone who follows any form of psychology whatsoever will always hear the fact that in most cases people are the person they are because of things that will have happened to them in the past, the learned experiences. And you are, a very much a people person, and clearly you learnt that skill way back in the day. So 12 different schools.
Yeah.
Blimey, 12 different girlfriends?
Unfortunately not. I didn't pick up that particular relationship building skill all too well as a young'un. Never mind.
Great. Okay. Look, so someone stops you at an exhibition and they say, "So nice to meet you. What do you do then?" What do you tend to reply when you're asked that question?
Yeah, you know what? And this has been one. This is one that I've wrestled with over the last year or so since starting my business, and come up with many different things. And typically, I will say that I'm a word of mouth expert, and people look at me a bit blankly because it's not something. There aren't many people that do what I do, which I'm amazed by. And then I tell people that I help brands identify, nurture, and scale strategic partner and referral opportunities. And then people still wonder what I do, I'll be honest with you. And they go, oh, so do you make referrals for people? And do you do partnerships? And I tell them that no, I work on a consultancy basis to give other people the skills and the strategy to do that. And it's a really interesting one because there aren't many people that do what I do. And I always find that amazing considering how vital referrals are for most businesses. So yeah.
It's an interesting word, that word referral, isn't it? Because obviously in the world of sales, where I spend all of my time, it's a word that's always mentioned, so often talked about, but very little is really understood about it. And that's what I'm so excited about getting from you over the next 60 minutes.
The power of that word, by the way, Matt, just as an interesting one.
Mm,
In sales, I'm sure it's fine, but I obviously do work with some salespeople, and I work with business owners. And any business owner that says they aren't in sales is deluding themselves.
correct.
But a lot of the time in that business owner space, I'll mention referrals as the thing that brings people in, but then very quickly, or especially if I'm working with broader customer-facing teams, I'll be talking about introductions. Because for some who aren't in sales, referrals has this sales connotation about it that can put
Yeah.
people off. So quite often I end up using the word introductions because it's nicer and gentler and everything else. So it's interesting the power of language in different demographics.
It's very logical as well, because at the end of the day, you can't really go anywhere near the world of referrals until you've done the front end introduction thing itself. So it kind of makes sense from my
Yeah.
perspective. Just to help the listener understand a little bit about your company, Collaboration Junkie. Just if I give you 60 seconds to sort of fast track and say, here's what we do and here's how we do it. Tell us all about Collaboration Junkie, Dave.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you, Matt. So, as I mentioned, we help brands identify, nurture, and scale partnership and word of mouth opportunities. So, what that means is whether you're looking to get more referrals from your customers and your clients and your network, or whether you're looking to work with other brands in partnership who can introduce you consistently. I help people with both the interpersonal skills to be able to do that, but then the systems and the process and the strategies to really get this stuff right and make it consistent and intentional. Very process driven behind the scenes, but it's still feeling really personal when you're actually going out and there doing this work. And I do that through workshops and consultancy and advice and events and all that other good stuff.
Terrific. Well, we'll unpack a bit more of that as we go. When I looked at, I'm going to change that. When I stalked you on on LinkedIn, I'm going to call that due diligence.
Yeah.
When I stalked you, and that's all sort of making sense for me because of the the earlier years, when you're moving from school to school and you're building this ability to be able to engage with different people and introducing yourself to people for the first time and then shifting and going somewhere new. When I look at your career, certainly the one that's showing on LinkedIn, you've predominantly spent most of your life in the people business, right? Sort of sales, recruitment, business development, and then something happened in 2012 where you decided to screw that. I'm going to go and work for myself. Just give me a little background into, the short-circuited version of the career path, would you?
Yeah. So BT straight from school, straight from A levels into their purchasing place, which was a great opportunity, but just felt a bit lost in the big kind of corporate environment. Fell into a sales role, was pretty good at it, actually, but it was very much business development more than out and out cold sales for me. I was always good at growing an account through. Was fed up of doing van sales, so took a punt at recruitment, which again, I enjoyed the people nature of it. What I didn't like was not being in control of my own destiny, though, because you could do all the good work in the world and then send someone to an interview and you're not responsible for closing your own deal, right?
Yeah.
And also recession hit. Recession hit at the end of the noughties, and it had gone from me having really good relationships with clients and be able to just send them people to interview to people expected me just to make spec calls. And I'm like, that's not how I do work. So I did what most recruiters do when they want another job. I went to another recruitment agency. And that's how I ended up in membership at the Chamber of Commerce. And that starting in membership is really where the real relationship building and how you build and leverage a network. While I've been practicing at it all those years without realizing it, that's where it became a much more intentional thing. So worked for the Chamber of Commerce, then ran my own membership organization in partner with someone else, grew that to a couple of thousand members. That morphed into a benefit business where I was working in partnership with the partnership teams of some big global brands, people like Regis and Volvo and Yell, and providing them leads. And that was an eye-opener. And then I got miserable running that business. I'd gone from running a community to having a very insular, process-led business. And it seems insane now because that I would ever be happy in a role like that. And I wasn't. And decided to offer some personal value and looked at what I knew lots about, which was partnerships and referrals. No one else was out there really doing it, which I was amazed by. Decided to launch the brand and build it up over time. COVID came along, wiped out the existing 6-figure business, and made me completely focus on this, which in hindsight, no one wants to lose a 6-figure business, Matt, when you've got a mortgage and wife and kids and all that sort of stuff. But there is a danger that if it hadn't happened, I'd be bumbling around with a couple of brands right now. And this is what I'm meant to be doing. The work I do now is what drives me, what excites me. I genuinely believe it's the stuff that I'm here to do. So yeah, it is what it is. And here we are, and here I am doing it.
Amen, brother, and I can certainly resonate with that. Let's get into the main event. 2 questions. You can answer them any way you want. I'm curious to know why we don't do more referrals, but probably the more important thing is to understand really what a referral is. So I don't know which one of those 2 you'd like to tackle.
Yeah, let me do what I think a referral is first, okay?
Great.
Because that's I often kick off my workshops with this, and I ask people for their different opinions, and there is no real dictionary definition. I suppose you probably get different ones, but my definition is that it's a warm, contextualized introduction from one contact to another. And so I'm not talking about affiliates really, where someone's just got a list and they want to monetize it. I'm talking about there being a genuine, actual introduction from one person to another. And there is a thing I call the referral staircase, where look, if someone wants to just share your content, that's still great, right? That's brilliant. That's still helping you out. If they want to push out an event you're doing or something like that. But in terms of the genuine referral, it's warm and it's contextualized and it's an actual introduction from one person to another. They're the types of referrals that I help people get more of.
Why do people avoid it? Why don't we do it more? What's the stigma attached with referrals? Why do we balls it up, mate?
So this is another one that I start whenever I run a kind of a free event or anything like that. And the 2 reasons come into one of 2 main categories. People either say they don't know how to, they're not sure when to ask, they're not sure what to ask for, which is kind of process-based stuff. You can learn that. Or people say they don't want to be a burden on someone else, or that they're worried, and I call it the ick, right? People just feel a bit icky about doing it. And I thought this was a British thing, but I've delivered talks to global audiences and a number of kind of events in America. And of any nation, you'd imagine they'd be the least icky about this stuff. But no, it's a universal thing, this slight ickiness about it.
It's a global pandemic.
Yeah. But the thing I always say, and I kind of flip it around, is that first of all, how does it feel when you make an introduction and then you get the feedback that that has gone well? Like, it feels really good. The majority of people do actually genuinely enjoy making introductions. You've just got to make it easy for people to do so, and then it doesn't feel like such a burden, I think. And so because of that, the other thing as well is people are making introductions anyway, but they're probably not. They're probably just talking about you.
Yeah.
So if people are talking about you anyway, why not give them some extra tools and be more intentional about it so that they're actually talking about you in the right way to the right people, and you're actually getting the introductions.
You just mentioned the word tools there. Are you going to give me some tools on this episode?
Yeah, I mean,
No, you don't have to do it now. I'm just curious to know, because otherwise I'm going to have a stampede of listeners going, that Dave guy was all right, but boy, oh boy, did he hold back the gold.
very quickly on just general introductions from your customers and your network and everything else. Number one rule is make it easy for someone, because
Okay.
everyone's busy, right? And so if you don't make it easy, even if someone wants to do something, they'll put it on their "I'll get round to it" pile and not do it. And you make it easy for someone by being as specific as you possibly can be. Right? You like, even if you can do business with any small business owner or whatever it is, that doesn't help someone make an introduction. So either asking them for a specific person that you know they know, that's the dream.
Yeah.
But other than that, being really specific in the type of business you're looking for, or the pain point that they might be going through, just makes it so much easier for people. And it's better to get, if you ask 10 people and you're really specific, then maybe only 4 will say that they can make an introduction, but 3 of them will do it and it'll be the right people. When you're broader, everyone will say yes, but it'll be unlikely you'll actually get the introductions. So my number one thing on like the tools would just be to keep it natural and be as specific as you possibly can.
Is that, you mentioned something called referral staircase. Is that one of the steps in the staircase then?
Yeah, so no, with me, the referral staircase is more about people often, when I'm working with people, they say, "Oh, what about asking for introductions, or what about asking for people to share my content?" And it's kind of almost like lower level introductions, and all that stuff is great. It's fine. It's still getting people used to referring you, right? It's still getting used to sharing your content, and every time someone introduces you or shares your content or does anything like that, essentially they're trusting a little bit of their reputation with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if in the first instance they're just happy to share your content, then great. It's a way of them building up some trust, and then maybe they'll make the ultimate sign and introduce someone to you at a given point. It's kind of like you get buying ladders, don't you, where you just get someone to give you some kind of financial commitment and then move them up that product ladder. It's a similar methodology to that, I suppose.
We mentioned before we hit record that one of the things that might be interesting to maybe explore or not is some of the myths around this whole thing around sort of word of mouth and referrals. And are there some myths out there that are worth bringing to the attention of the listener?
Yeah, I think one of them is that you can't scale through word of mouth. Like it's almost something that you do to a certain point as a start business, and then you have to start doing other stuff.
So you start up, you go through the 2-3 years of trying to build, and then when you get to a certain position, I know you've hired team, everything's going great, loads of inbound leads. The myth is then at that point turn off the referral thing,
Yeah,
and
and
that's completely the wrong thing to do.
yeah, and I am not. It's called a marketing mix for a reason. Like referrals and partnerships very much straddle the sales and marketing divide. It's lead gen activity, right? But
Yeah,
it's called a mix for a reason. That you should have all that stuff in play, because when you are particularly when you're looking to scale and you're starting to look further afield, or you're looking for either larger business, or you're looking to break into new verticals, an introduction shortcuts the know, like, trust process, right? But it doesn't negate it. And the bigger the business you're looking for an introduction or to do business with, as I said, or if it's in a sector they're not used to, you still need to have this other materials to back that up, be it social proof, be it a content strategy, be it a nice website, whatever it may be. And so while would never say you don't need to do other things, it's let's not neglect the thing that got us here and go, well, if it's got us this far without having a real strategy, because most people don't have a strategy, they call it organic.
yeah,
Then imagine if we did this stuff properly with intention. Intention's a word I use a lot.
sure.
It's not about suddenly being really pushy. It's just about being intentional about what you're looking for. And when you do that, you can start using it to move into other sectors or larger businesses, or internal referrals is a huge one. The amount of people I speak to where they they work with one division of a large organization and don't think to kind of do that, look for introductions across departments within large organizations.
Yeah.
So that's the biggest one for me is around scaling.
Because on that actually on that last point there, Dave, that's just for standard sort of table stakes. If you're in the world of law or financial, well, maybe not financial because they're all a bit cutthroat there, but
Yeah.
in the world of law and solicitors, then they're forever referring into company to some extent, aren't they?
Yes. Well, the enlightened ones are. The
Yeah.
enlightened ones are. It's amazing the amount that you speak to that don't, and whether or not it's internal competition, or they're just not
Possibly. Yeah.
opportunity minded. So yeah, but absolutely, and there's no reason why it shouldn't be. There's no reason why that passing of introduction should be any different with other organisations. So
Got the first one. It's not scalable. That's a myth. Any more?
yeah, so another one I think is around. So we've covered. I think we've covered another one, which is the basis of the ick, right? People thinking that they're going to be a burden on someone else, or people won't like it if they ask them, right? That's a massive myth. I always say, what's the worst that could happen if you ask someone for an introduction? And it's not that they suddenly take their business away from you; it's that they say no. Like,
Yeah.
so the ick, its root cause is either imposter syndrome or fear of rejection. Which, if we really boil it down, it's probably one of those two things. It's an absolute myth that people don't like making introductions or are going to feel offended by you asking them. But then another one that I get come up quite a lot is that it's like a linear process, and
Okay.
it's not. And it links into the scale again, because someone who comes to you via introduction is much more likely to introduce you to someone, and they're much more likely to do it early, because earlier in the customer journey, because that's how they came to you. And so one can become two, and then the two can become four, and the four can become eight, if you know what I mean. It's this, when done right, it can be used to really great effect. And that early in the journey bit is probably the other final myth around this piece, which is often people think that they have to have been a certain way down, delivered a certain amount of value before they've earned the right to ask. And I know a bunch of sales training tells you, no, the best time to ask for a referral is at sale. And I'm not going to disagree with that in some instances. For me, the very best time to ask is when your customer is most delighted with you. And that traditional training is right. For the vast majority of businesses, it's much earlier in their customer journey than they think it is.
I absolutely fundamentally believe the wrong time to ask for a referral is at the close. It has to be once the other person has received the value that you promised you'd give them as a consequence of getting involved with your product or your service. And that can only happen after a period of time has happened and they're starting to see the payback or the investment or the upside of whatever it is they just bought from you.
Yeah.
Because the risk otherwise is, and hopefully, Dave, we're getting as far away from that world as we possibly can. That's certainly my intention of the work that I do, is that sort of asking for a referral at the close. Thanks for signing. Who else do you know just like you who could hang around with someone like me? That's real 1980s stuff, that I think.
Yeah. So where I say I don't completely disagree with it is some people I work with give so much value at their kind of discovery piece that the person's ready to introduce, right? They're sold. They've come in via an introduction and they know it. For some people, it can be even earlier than that. Like if you've got a new bit of tech that solves a problem in a really unique way, and someone comes across your product and goes, "Oh my God, where have you been all my life? You're exactly what I'm waiting for." They're ready to tell every single friend who's got that same problem about your bit of kit.
That's fair.
And so my point is that while I completely agree with you, it needs to be value based. And so, to be fair, I suppose I only work with nice businesses typically, like businesses that I believe in. So I think it's fine to ask earlier if you know you're going to deliver that value. But so many business owners think that they're the judge of when the value's been delivered. And my argument is that's not our decision to make. The customer decides when you've delivered enough value.
Yep.
And that could be intangible results, or it could be you've just shown enough knowledge and value that they've got the confidence that's going to come. And I always use the example of when I got my branding done. My wow moment, as I like to call it, was when they delivered me the first draft of it back.
Yeah.
And it was so much more than I ever thought it would be. And I just absolutely loved it. When they delivered me the assets, like a month down the line and it was finalized, it was still great, but it didn't feel as spectacular because all they'd done is deliver against my heightened expectations.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it's that thing around we're not ultimately the ones that decide whether we've delivered enough value or not. The customer.
Dave, is there a period of time where it becomes almost too late to ask for a referral?
It depends on the nature of your product or service. Do you know what I mean? Like if you're in continuous contact with them, it becomes a little easier. You've probably built up a bank of goodwill, and they'll go, "Yeah, of course. Why the hell didn't you ask before?" If it's a more transactional product, then yeah, you probably need to engineer. You need to engineer a customer touch point that reminds them of how much they love you, so that you put them in that mindset where they're open and receptive and are likely to respond to it.
Yeah, that's really well explained actually. So if you're involved with some kind of recurring solution, then you're always to some extent quite easy to remind them of what you're buying from us right now. Kind of makes sense. I get that. One of my clients is a really large commercial lighting company, and we're partway through a sort of a 6-month training program with those guys. And ironically, this week I'm with them, and we're talking about some of this stuff. And quite a lot of them will say, "Well, I've got loads and loads of organisations I did work with. Can I go and reach out to them? And even though we sold to them 18 months ago, can I reach out to them and ask for a referral?" And I guess the question is answered by, well, it depends. It depends what your relationship's like with them, and it depends whether or not there was enough satisfaction from the work that you did for them that warrants them to remind themselves of that experience and then lead you into someone else. I don't know if I know the answer to that. What would your thoughts be on that? If it's an 18-month sale, it's a one-off sale. It might be for hundreds of thousands of pounds, by the way. It normally is with those guys. Is it too late after sort of 18 months to revisit?
So there's a 2-part answer to this. The first one is if part of that commercial lighting going in was that it was going to be delivering cost savings over time, then you've maybe got an excuse to go back and kind of review some of that stuff, case study, whatever, which just unearths another piece. The broader answer, though, is one where I completely agree with what you just said. For all the processes that you can put in place around introductions, particularly with your customers and your clients, it's still a personal thing, which means that it isn't one size fits all. It's up to you to go, you know what? Yeah, you know what? I got on really well with Dave actually during the whole process. And he did say at the end, if you ever need anything, give me a shout. So maybe I should. Yeah. And in that instance, and that's where I think the ick comes in with referrals. It should feel like asking a favor from a friend. And so if you feel like you had a good relationship, just picking up the phone and being really honest about it. But in that instance, if the longer the gap's been, then the more important it is to do all the heavy lifting. So in that instance, going and finding out 2 other people that your contact knows that you think there's a good chance of them knowing and going, listen, I couldn't do a favor. You couldn't do me a favor, could you? I see you know this person and this person. Could you make the introduction? There's nothing wrong with that. The relationship's there.
There is a smart answer to this, of course, which is you shouldn't really be doing what you do if you haven't spoken to someone that you sold a shitload of lighting to 18 months ago.
There is that.
Should be keeping in contact with them. One of the things that intrigued me was on your website was something called the D.A.N.C.E acronym. Would you be kind enough to unpack that for the listener?
Yeah, absolutely. And so partnerships are for me, the holy grail of lead generation, because it's taking this referral introduction piece that no matter how much more you process it and do it repeatedly, still has some limitations. Partners in my world are where it's working with other organizations that not only are talking to your ideal market at the ideal time to buy, but they have a vested interest in introducing you, and they can do that consistently, and so they become strategic partners. And for it to be strategic, you need to have a strategy. And so, like all good speakers, I came up with mine, which is dance. That's my five steps. And so it stands for discovery, which is all about who your ideal partners are; assembly, which is about the behind the scenes systems; nurturing, which is about how you communicate with your partners; connection, which is how you support your partners, help them to help you; and then engagement, which is all about how you actually go out and find new partners. That framework, that structure is what I hang all of my partnership work I do with my clients around.
Is it possible to just deep dive into each one of those?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, of course, of course. So discovery is the interesting one, and I'd say particularly if there's people listening today that have obviously got sales roles, but partnerships is a piece of it. The discovery is a really interesting one because having done a little bit of work in sales myself and know a bunch of salespeople, kind of that fear of missing out piece can be quite strong with salespeople, right? And the discovery piece is all about really understanding who your ideal partners are and why they would want to work with you. And what this means is it's not about saying we don't partner with other people who can introduce us, but if you know who your ideal ones are, then you dedicate more time to them. And it means you have more successful partners and you get more leads and you get more leads at the right time. And I talk about value chains quite a lot in terms of it's very rare that whatever business you're in, that you solve a customer's end-to-end problem. You're normally one piece of an overall puzzle. It's like the whole no one buys a drill or the hole in the wall, they buy the nice looking shelf at the end of it all, right? It's that kind of methodology. And your ideal partner is the person that sits just before you or overlaps you. Because for those people, you're helping them deliver a better end result for the client. The end result that the client is ultimately going to judge the brand on whether they should or not. And so an example of this in really easy terms would be people wouldn't go to a website builder for a well-coded website. I mean, they would, but that's not the sole purpose. They want a website that actually delivers an end result. And that's why for someone who's very tech-based, working with a really good copywriter or videographer helps deliver that end goal. So for the copywriter, technical website builders are the perfect partner because they're going to refer them in because it helps deliver this end goal. And it's about really getting to the grips of that and positioning your language so that when you're talking to partners, you're not talking about the value you deliver to the client, you're talking about the value that you deliver to the partner.
Got it.
And it's
That's really
such
cool.
a subtle shift, but it's the way of cutting through the thousands of spammy LinkedIn messages that these people get all the time. And even if they're not meant as spammy, when you're talking in client language, it just says, I want to sell your list.
Got it.
I want to help you deliver an end result.
So let's use me as the example, Dave. So I don't currently have a partnership strategy in place. It's on my whiteboard. It has been for about 12 months, mate. It's now about to get red ringed as a consequence of having this conversation with you. And so, all my world is centered around helping salespeople stop doing the silly things that make selling difficult. So it's essentially training and coaching, right?
Yeah.
So closest to me just before would probably be somebody who's in the world of lead gen.
Yeah.
Because I'm doing my best work with someone who's got a lead in their hand and doesn't want to burn it.
Yeah.
So one would assume I need to go and find somebody who's in the lead generation space, social media expert, something like that, someone who's creating traffic for top of funnel.
Yep, I had a client in that very space. So they weren't quite in your space. They were telemarketing, but very, very good. They were high-end telemarketing sales. They were doing a partner program and they were trying to launch it on the basis of a commission-driven thing, which is important, but not essential. And yeah, then the whole market was going out to people that did kind of pay-per-click and advertising, things like that, because ultimately that the person doing that lead gen piece, they're getting paid to deliver leads, but they're going to be judged on how much business is generated, right?
Well, that's
yes.
right. And the advantage I would bring to that person, that partner, would be that you want to see the hardest thing in the world of marketing, of course, is return on investment. But if you are generating leads in your world, I'll be the guy that allows the organization then to convert more of those leads into sales. Ergo, they get a payback and they can see the benefit that investing in social media can bring.
Yeah, exactly. Which means they either maintain budgets or increase them or increase ad spend or whatever it may be. Yeah, absolutely that. It's exactly
Boom.
that principle.
And then if I go just behind me, what comes to mind is someone who's like, for example, a CRM expert. And so the value to them, those guys will be sales are going to go up. They're going to want to track and measure that performance. They want to leverage now this new world of being better at selling stuff. And therefore, a CRM is the obvious choice because not only will they be able to measure conversion rate, deal time, they'll also be able to, really hit tasks heavy and have this, basically have way more control over the whole sales process.
Yeah, or even it could be if they've already worked with us to implement a CRM, and that's pulled out the fact that actually the problem is in conversions. Well, that's great. You could argue that the CRM's done its job, but how it's even better if they then refer in someone that can actually change that. That's then next level stuff, right? So
love it. Okay, so that's the D, discovery. A is assembly.
yeah, and so this is the wonderful world of systems. It's about having the structure of the partnership, right? So are we paying commissions and things like that? I'm a big fan of, in partnerships, I'm a big fan of commissions. It helps elevate the relationship from a friendly handshake to something more formal. Can't happen all the time because of FCA regulations maybe and things like that. But there we go. Interestingly, in the world of introductions and referrals from your kind of wider network, it can be really damaging to push a financial reward. Now, I appreciate we've probably got a sales heavy listenership here who'd be like, what? But for the non-salesy people, it can make them feel a bit icky if you over incentivize. So it's better to do a more personal reward, right? But in a more formal relationship, like have that structure in place. And then the big system piece is around tracking of leads. So I mentioned earlier that piece around every time people trust you with their reputation when they make introductions, and you need some in which means you need to know where people are in the buying cycle. I had partners before where I would inquire. I'd have a meeting coming up with someone, and I knew I'd referred them in, and so I'd check where they were in that person's cycle, and they wouldn't be able to tell me, and it would either make me think that they were a crook because they hadn't registered it because they didn't want to pay commission, or that they genuinely didn't know and they were incompetent. And neither of those two things are a good look as a partner, right? So it's the assembly bit doesn't win you partners, but it keeps you them. It's the thing that builds and maintains trust and also allows you to scale your partnerships without it burning you out.
Totally understand the point around sort of formal reward or some way of formal recognition. You just want to make it far more professional, right? You need some skin in the game. Is that the point?
Yeah, absolutely. It's the logic bit, right? So most people buy emotionally, and partnerships are exactly the same. But by having the commercial bit in place as well, it's making sure we tick every box. It helps protect it from people leaving. It means that it's a commercial thing. It's a proper business relationship rather than just a friendly handshake. I'm not a huge fan of cross referral relationships. I'm not saying we shouldn't do it, but where relationships purely based on the cross paths thing, it's quite rare that we're equal. Because of that value chain piece, it's very rare that you can find a relationship where that's going to be even. And
so what you're saying is, if I find you business, and you don't find me, that's okay because you're paying me commission for the ones that I find you.
Yeah. As rarely is it the main reason. The partner value proposition is the main bit, but it just makes sure everyone's happy and rewarded.
The second thing I was going to just talk about briefly was the point you mentioned around tracking. I'm sort of feeling slightly guilty of that because a good friend of mine has passed me a couple of referrals recently that I've had conversations with and meetings with. But I noticed that person hasn't checked in with me, and sadly, I haven't fed back to them yet the outcome. That really did hit home for me when you mentioned it, because that's such a key and obvious thing that most people won't do.
Yeah, absolutely. And this falls into the nurture piece. Lots of people don't do it. Lots of people will let, and this rings true for any introduction. Lots of people will let people know how it's gone if it goes well, but they won't do it if it doesn't, or if it's being long and dragged out. Which means, if you want anyone to introduce you consistently, then keep them in the loop. Don't have to update them all the time or do War and Peace, but the more you keep them in the loop, the better. And even if it doesn't turn into business, you should still say thanks because someone's made the effort to make the introduction. Yeah. And by saying thank you, you're more likely to get another introduction. but also it's an opportunity to educate them as to why the introduction didn't work out, because it may be that the lead just wasn't quite right. And so saying thank you gets you another introduction. Educating them means that the next time it's more like it potentially is going to be a better introduction.
God, that's so bloody logical. But it is though, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
it's the perfect. It didn't. This one didn't work out. Let me tell you the reasons why. Maybe we can just tweak and adjust so that it
Yeah.
doesn't happen again, friend. Okay, so we've done discovery, assembly, nurture. We're into connection.
Yeah. What I very much will also quickly say on the nurture piece is it can be very easy, particularly in the world of SaaS, to over automate a partner program. Like, oh, we don't need to talk to our partners. They get access to a live dashboard and their onboarding super slick and automated. And there is a time and a place for automated templated transactions. And that's things like monthly reports and lead status updates. But do at your peril negate the relationship building thing, because that's at its core what partnership's about. And there's something that I say a lot, which is that curiosity is the birthplace of opportunity. And if you're negating the kind of the lunches, the outside of the day-to-day activity catch-ups with your partners, then you can almost guarantee that you're missing out on opportunity within your partners.
Dave, before we move on to connection, then stay in nurturing. You just said there reporting.
Yeah.
I suspect that's probably not. Correct me if I'm wrong. This is your field of expertise and not mine. But I suspect that some sort of reporting system is probably not that relevant to someone who's in, I don't know, small startup, scale up role. That sounds like it's the sort of thing that really large organizations almost have a kind of department based on partnerships.
Yes and no, because it's quite easy to do these days. Let's say I'm one of my target markets. One of my target markets is agencies, Matt. Right. So let's say I'm working with an agency community, and they were sending me 5 to 10 kind of contacts a month. Let's say, for argument's sake, me sending them an email once a month that goes, "Hey, this is where everyone is. These are the people that are clients. These are the people that are prospects. Thanks." That's kind of, while they wouldn't necessarily expect it from an organization of my size, I immediately elevate myself to being a much more professional partner than anyone else they're working with. And so you're right. If you're working with someone and they're handing you 1 or 2 leads here and there a month, then yeah, it's not needed. It's a more personal thing. But the minute there's any sort of volume, then I'd say it's a worthwhile exercise to do, because you can do this stuff pretty easy. You can most people have a CRM, right? And you can do it on there. It's better to have a spreadsheet that you use than a CRM system that you don't, but it elevates you. It's about perception.
This is an interesting one as well. So that also triggered a thought in my mind about if you're an organization and if you are receiving leads. So let me give you an example. An organization, let's say for argument's sake, they're an outsourced service provider and they are getting lots of leads from law firms because it's the part of the law firm that they don't want to do themselves. It's just a little bit small or clunky, and therefore we'll feed that down to one of our partners. Without that formal partnership strategy being in place, it just so happens this law firm is sending down leads. Having some kind of measurement, tracking, reporting allows you to then say, well, hang on a second, how do we get more?
Yeah,
Doesn't it?
it does. And what it also allows you to do is see trends. So that, let's say there's been a spike, you can pick up the phone to them and see what they did. Is this repeatable? Can we do this with our other partners?
Yeah.
Right? And if there's a dip, you can pick up the phone to them and see what's going on, see if is there any more support they need, right? So it's, yeah.
That's a real gem for me, that one. If listening to this has just stimulated you to think, we do get those, maybe not as frequently as we like, but they certainly come in our direction. What Dave is now saying is, well, go and explore that and go and, whether you're nurturing it or whatever, but go and start to measure and then go and have that conversation and see if there's an opportunity or an appetite to put something slightly more formal in place. Let's move forward. C.
And you know what? Yeah, your piece then absolutely segued in nicely. You're doing well with this. So connection, I'm sure there will be lots of people listening to this who have had partnerships that haven't gone anywhere, right? It's promised the world and they're not delivered. And typically that's because people have sat back and waited for it to work. And so connection is all about the support you give your partners to help them connect you to their audience. And there's two sides to this. I'm going to do customer facing first.
Yeah.
So that's make sure you give your partners all the collateral they need. And don't just give them your standard stuff. Make it sound so that it's come from them, so that it's easy for them to copy and paste and just send out. Like genuinely, and find out what they're doing. If they're running a monthly event, well, can you go and be the guest speaker? If they've got a podcast, can you do that?
So this goes back to your ecosystem of content, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, got it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And it's how can we adapt that so it's easy for the partner? Make it easy for the partner and become whoever your partner is, whether they've got a dedicated marketing person or just someone who it's a bit of their responsibility, become their best friend. Right? If you've got your partner value proposition right, they want your content because it's relevant to their audience.
Yeah.
And you become one less blog post they don't have to write, one less speaker they've got to find, one less. Do you know what I mean?
That's such a great point. Yeah.
It's people often think they're being cheeky if they over-egg it, but you're not. You can become their best friend if you provide them good content that's written in a way that sounds like it's coming from them, but obviously promoting you. Then you become their best friend.
What needs to be done in that case, though, is just sit down with them and ask them what works best.
Absolutely. Yeah, get a marketing plan in place. We've got this stuff, but what else do you do? And they might go, oh, right, yeah. Well, we also do this, this, and this. And you can decide whether that's something that's going to work for you or not. The other side is internal stuff. So we might think that when to promote us is really obvious, but that's because we live and breathe what we do. And it's not common sense, it's experience. And so sitting down with your partners and giving them the benefit of what's in our heads is vital, particularly where you might be arranging a partnership with someone else in a relatively senior position who gets it all, right? But if it's not them that's implementing the partnership, then there's going to be a gap in people's knowledge in that filter down. So making sure all the team feels supported as one. But then you can go a step further as well. You can look at your partner's customer journeys and figure out where it's possible for you to actually offer proactive value built in, or where can they, as part of their onboarding, is there questions they can ask that make an introduction to you the next logical step. Is really making it really, really easy for them to just introduce you as second nature and not leave it to chance.
No wonder we need people like you in the world to help people like me understand how this thing works. What I've really learned so far on this episode is, by all means, go and wing it. But actually what you're spelling out here is a way of mitigating the risk as much as making it possible to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the challenges with referrals and partnerships with things is people think they just happen. And at referral level, it's, well, that's just organic. It's like, oh yeah, whatever, it doesn't get the credit it deserves. And at partnerships, typically people have got some that work, some that don't. And it's like, oh, it's a bit of an unknown quantity, a bit magic, right? Like it's just luck with it. And it's not. Put a strategy behind it and do this stuff well. And they won't all work out, but you've got the best possible chance of them succeeding.
So the last letter in D.A.N.C.E is E, and it's engagement.
Yeah, going out and getting more partners, which people typically think that is the thing they need to do most of, and it's not. It's the other 4 bits, because you get the other 4 bits right, and you make the most of the opportunities that you've got, and the 5th bit becomes easy. And the key thing here is to remember your partner value proposition at all times, lead with that partner first led approach. And it's also to be realistic about who an ideal partner. If you're just starting out on your partner journey, thinking about who an ideal partner is, it's probably not the person that a year down the line you can go and partner with when you've got a proven model. Because if you get them right away, you might not get them anyway, but they might break you and they might be quite unforgiving. So it's like, where can I test the water and build out? And it's being really sensible about how you grow your partner network. And for most of us, we've got people within our networks, or at least once removed within our networks, who are ideal partners for us. And if there was one piece on this engagement bit that I would encourage your audience to go and do, or if they've done the other bits and they think, you know what, actually, I think I've got a good proposition here, find the person in your network that fits within that demographic and ask them for help. Hey, Matt, I'm building out a partner channel this year, and I've got to be honest, you sit right within my demographic. I would love it if I could get 20 minutes of your time and just to get you to some feedback on it before I kind of go down this route. And it works. Most people are nice people, right? And when you stroke their ego as well, most of them will then give you that advice. And so you'll get good advice. They may or may not become a partner, but even if they don't, they'll probably introduce you to a few people who might be. And so that's the engagement is actually the easiest bit, I think.
The primary objective there isn't necessarily for that person to be a partner. It's about sanity checking, fine tuning, or rather more importantly, allowing that person to almost say to themselves, "It's not me, Dave, but I know the perfect person for you."
Yeah, and in some instances they might become a partner, right? You never know,
Yeah.
but it's a genuine request for help, and that's feedback and onward connections.
Mate, that's spectacular, and I'm so grateful for you being so candid with some of that advice. I want to send people somewhere to go and get a bit more of the Dave love. Where's the best place to send folks to?
So best two places. Either come and find me on LinkedIn. There aren't many Dave Plunketts. Certainly not one at Collaborate. There's only one at Collaboration Junkie as well. I do share loads of content on there. Or they can head over to collaborationjunkie.com, where again there's a little bit more about the work that I do, which is either on a one-to-one basis or one-to-team basis, or for smaller businesses as well, or individual employees. I do online group programs on both referrals and partnerships as well. They're the two best places.
Dave, just out of curiosity, do you do open programs and things like that, or are you effectively working with clients?
So I do a monthly workshop, free workshop, which alternates between partnerships or referrals. And so the partnership one is kind of what we've done today, just done slightly differently.
Yep.
And so I run one of those a month, and so
Okay.
they'll always be on my LinkedIn and advertised on the website as well.
Thank you ever so much for giving up your time today. I try, if I can, to ask our guests just to fire, rather than do the quick fire questions, just sort of quick fire advice. So if I use the D.A.N.C.E framework and I sort of said to you, where would you send me, or what would you ask me to do if I said to you discovery?
To be really selective, think about who sits before you in the value chain, and really think about where you deliver the greatest value to their specific piece. Be really, really selective about who your ideal partner is.
Assembly.
Track. It is so vitally important to track where leads are in your system.
Nurturing.
Set expectations. If you decide you're going to enter into a partnership, set and document expectations.
Connection.
Remember that it's not common sense, it's experience. Sit down with your partners and look through their customer journey and see where you can easily be interwoven into their processes.
And finally, engagement.
Look at what you've got around you and ask for help.
Thank you so much for giving up your time today and for being such a great guest on the Sales Cadence podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Worth just reminding ourselves of that quote that I gave you at the start of the episode. According to a recent survey, 91% of customers would be willing to provide a referral to a company or brand they are satisfied with. However, only 11% of salespeople actually ask for referrals. I hope this episode has given you a little bit of an insight into actually how to become a little bit less wingy, and a little bit more strategic in the way that you would leverage something like a referral, which ultimately is, as Dave points out, a pretty logical thing and a pretty human thing to do. If someone's enjoyed an experience, a level of service, they've got a significant outcome as a consequence of working with you, then I'm pretty sure that person would have no problem helping you find someone like them. It's just how you go about doing it, and I think that's what Dave explained beautifully on this episode. Folks, that's your lot. Thanks so much for listening. Remember the mantra, everybody's in sales, we're all selling something. No excuse to get out there and go and sell a bit more, folks. And I'll look forward to seeing you on the next episode of the Sales Cadence podcast.